Well, hello, and welcome to the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast. If you love wine, specifically white wine, there is a good chance that you've come across the grape that we are going to be chit-chatting about today. Somehow in the 100+ episodes, we've never really spent an entire episode on it, but it is America's favorite wine grape right now. We love Sauvignon Blanc. We're in our Sauvignon Blanc era. Blame Taylor Swift. I don't know what the deal is, but people love it. I love it. I'm here for it. I love that everyone on the internet is here for it. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Sauvignon Blanc and all the wonders that exist around this variety that grows around the entire globe. So to do that with me today, I've brought a new friend, an internet friend. Some of you may have seen her videos on Instagram and TikTok. She talks about high stakes situations when it comes to wine. She breaks down your favorite cult wines. She makes wine really fun and approachable, which of course we love on this show, and doing what I do on the internet, I personally love as well. So please welcome to the show, Pilar Brito. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, and thank you for sending me this wine.
This is going to be fun. I'm excited. I know it's early for you, but given that, I don't know if you're an Emily in Paris fan, this wine, not specifically this wine, but Sancerre was referred to as a breakfast wine on one of the earlier episodes. And I thought, 10 o'clock breakfast wine, Sauvignon Blanc, this kind of vibes, right?
Oh, totally. No, yeah, like Sancerre, Chablis, they're great breakfast wines. I'm all for it.
Ooh, I love the Chablis edition. Why Chablis?
I just feel like it pairs really well with like a good omelet. Have you never
Okay,
tried
no,
that
I
before?
agree.
Highly recommend.
No, but now that you're saying it, makes perfect sense because I obviously I love champagne for breakfast. Who doesn't? And
Oh
I
yeah,
always feel like
definitely.
Chablis is like flat champagne. So I feel like that should work.
Yeah, you got to give it a try. That is my go-to, but Sancerre is a great one too, for sure.
I love this. We're off to a great start. Add a little caviar and creme fraiche onto my omelet and a little Chablis, and we'll call it a day. Amen.
Oh, yeah, I thought the caviar was a given, but yeah, for sure.
Uh,
Just kidding.
I knew that we would be fast friends. I'm very excited. You are really blowing up on the internet right now, but I know wine is sort of a new thing for you, or doing this full time. Are you calling yourself a wine influencer yet? What's your preferred title?
I say content creator only because I think that the word influencer has a bit of a negative connotation for a lot of people, especially in the wine industry. I think it shouldn't. And I think that that's changing as people are catching on to how valuable and important it is.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I say wine specifically ever. Like I'm totally fine with that. I haven't really thought deeply about what to call myself other than like when people ask, I say I'm a content creator and a lot of my content focuses on like wine and the lifestyle around wine. But if
Yeah.
I needed to summarize it in two words, yeah, that would totally work.
It's interesting, this negative connotation around influencer. And I think specifically in the wine industry, which is sort of laden with stereotypes and stigmas, where you want so badly to be embraced by this community that can feel a little bit snobbish. And at the same time, you're like, there's a part of me that just wants to embrace wine influencer just to be contrarian to this community that I love so dearly, but also needs to be like bopped against the head every now and then.
Yeah, and I will like caveat that with I've met so many amazing, great people in the wine industry that have like very much recognized the value of influencers, and I think even actually more so than I was expecting, have really like welcomed me in and see me as a part of this industry that I'm actually very new to. So I don't mean to like disregard that in any way,
No.
but you do definitely meet the occasional person that just like somehow I don't know how because it's so ubiquitous, but just like doesn't get it. So I agree. I have started leaning a little bit more to maybe I should like reclaim the word influencer. And I
Oh, big.
definitely do see like a lot more content creators across the internet just kind of like reclaiming the word because it's really powerful and it's extraordinarily valuable. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Well, you're following in the footsteps of maybe the OG wine influencer, Robert Parker, who was also a lawyer before he got into wine. So your pathway, I know this is not an interview show, but it's so interesting because I know you started off as a lawyer and now you're making videos. I saw you only started like in January of 2024. So this is like a relatively
Yeah.
new thing
Wow.
for you. But how has that path been for you, and are you enjoying it?
I'm definitely enjoying it for sure. I feel very, very lucky to be doing this and also very lucky that it sort of, I mean, I still feel like I have a long way to go, but I feel very lucky that it kind of like worked out, so to speak, after such a short period of time where I could do this full time because Like some of it is you figure out what content works, but some of it is luck. So I feel lucky that like my trajectory has been what it has.
Becoming a lawyer is no easy feat, right? Like there's a lot of steps and a lot of work and a lot of studying that goes into becoming a lawyer. So it's not like, you were doing something else that didn't require several college degrees and a couple tests to get there. So I'm just curious, like, was that a difficult decision to make given the fact that it is such a difficult thing to do?
It was a difficult transition to make. Once I made the decision, it was not difficult for a few reasons. So I really discovered my passion for wine in law school. I would say it was like sort of incubating before then. Like we moved to Europe when I was a kid. And I think that that just kind of opens your eyes to like a world
Mm,
of travel and food. And even like the food culture in the US is amazing now. But like when I was born, like in the 90s and early 2000s, it like wasn't what it is now. So I got exposed to like a really robust food culture very young as the result of living abroad. So I kind of had this interest in food and travel for a long time. But I did not grow up in a wine drinking family. And obviously, like living in Europe as a kid, you are drinking a little bit of wine, but it's not like a big part of your life.
yeah.
And then I like went to college and I majored in French literature. So again, it was kind of a part of it. Like I was studying abroad in France a lot and my professors would pour champagne at office hours, which was great. But it wasn't
We have
like
very different college experiences. This is fun.
I was also still like drinking like La Marca taped to my hands at frat parties too. Like don't worry, I still had that college
Oh my
experience.
God.
But
Edward Prosecco hands. I'm here for it.
yeah, that was so bad for your gut. But
So
um,
bad.
yeah. And then when I went to law school is when I got really into wine. So I kind of like didn't know I wanted to be in wine until I was already on that path to becoming a lawyer.
Mm,
My law school had this very intense, they don't even call it a wine club, it's a wine society. That is literally what it's
mhm.
called. Where basically, I mean, I was so lucky to have it. It's such an amazing resource. And a few other grad schools do this, but producers or importers or sometimes auction houses really coming in every week to kind of show off their portfolio with the idea of, okay, you guys are broke law students now, but eventually you are going to have really great disposable income and be the kind of people who would collect our wine. So like we want to give you this first great introduction to wine to make sure that you're hooked and also that, you feel a sense of loyalty to our wine, which to their credit really worked. I really highly recommend it as a business development strategy for any winery. I am extremely loyal to the producers that came and actually gave me a really good introduction to wine. And our first tasting when I was in law school was Chateau Margaux. So
Oh,
that was,
casual.
yeah, it was amazing. So that was like just kind of a big aha moment for me. Like that was my first time trying a truly exceptional wine. Yeah, it just really clicked in my brain. And I got super involved. I like joined the board of the wine society. I was the person kind of like running those tastings, building relationships with producers. I started doing blind tasting competitions, which was really fun. And
Ooh,
yeah, and then I started doing the CMS certification. I later switched to WSET just because I've never worked in service. So like I have stodged
yeah.
a teeny bit, but
Smart.
never worked in service. And it's just pretty hard to learn unless, you have that experience, as you know. And then I started to see this really amazing trajectory with social media and influencing that I just like wasn't paying attention to before and wasn't super aware of before. So I represented a lot of CPG consumer products companies when I was a lawyer, like a lot of CPG startups. And I started seeing very consistently that the ones that were acquired for the highest multiples had the lowest customer acquisition costs, like understood what their consumers wanted the best, were by far the ones where the founders were influencers prior. And that just like really cemented how important something like influencing could be. And then since I quit my law firm in January, when I kind of got to like 100,000 followers and just really saw that like my messaging and my perspective was really hitting with people. And I felt like I kind of found my stride a little bit and felt like I actually didn't really have many brand deals at that point, but I felt like I could get them. Since then, it's been really really amazing. I feel like I was ready to make the decision. I'd been doing it for a year, trying to build up to that. So, and it's been wonderful. I feel like I have like found a foothold in the industry I really wanted to be in, and I've also found a really incredible and engaged community. Like I know the internet can be really negative sometimes, and I feel like we've carved out this like very positive corner of the internet that people are really happy to be a part of. And I like absolutely love just fostering that.
Let's talk a little bit about Sauvignon Blanc and your thoughts, because the one thing that I didn't mention at the top of the show, I have mentioned in previous episodes. I actually, for probably the first 5 or 6 years of my career, I hated Sauvignon Blanc. It was a grape that I didn't touch. I didn't like it. It was the citrus thing was like not for me. But I also think that there's just so many bad examples of Sauvignon Blanc out there. I think it's one of these grapes that becomes the cash flow mechanism at a winery. And for that reason, it often becomes this wine that gets pumped out a little too fast and corners are cut. And so there's just not the best representation out there. But I think in the past few years, that's really started to change. And so if you are joining us with the bottle that we're discussing today, I think this is a great example of where Sauvignon Blanc can really just be a superstar grape. The wine that we have today is the 2023 La Rive from Menetou-Salon. If you're looking at this label and you're like, I don't know what any of these things mean, you're not along. I posted a video, I don't know, a few months ago that just hit 1 million views, which shocked me because it was basically all about how Sauvignon Blanc is some of the best Sauvignon Blancs are not labeled as Sauvignon Blanc on the actual label. And this is one of them, although it does say it on the back label. So if you look in the front label, it does not say Sauvignon Blanc anywhere on here. But if you know that Menetou-Salon is a region in the Loire Valley, then you know, and you see it's a white wine, then you know that it's 100% Sauvignon Blanc. Coming from this place that's very, very close to another very famous Sauvignon Blanc region, Sancerre. And just a little further from that, Puy-Fumé, two places we've definitely talked about on this show before. So cheers to you, Pilar. I hope you're enjoying this wine.
Cheers, I am.
How do you feel about Sauvignon Blanc? Do you like it?
I feel like, okay, two things. What, like, currently, and this has been the case for a long time, like since I got into wine, people always ask me like, oh, what's your favorite wine? Like, what's your favorite grape? And like my answer, and this is the case with like food, design, anything. I like anything as long as it's good. Like as long as it's something that's like true
well
to what
made.
it is, it's good quality. Yeah, I will like it. It might not be the thing I'm always going to reach for. Like I would say Loire Valley is one of the regions I always reach for. Burgundy also, like the classics, like Burgundy, Champagne, Piedmont. But I will like anything as long as it's well made and it's like there's just some sort of perspective of the winemaker there. And I think, but going back, I was one of those weirdos that I didn't think I liked white wine at all, actually. Yeah.
Like when you first started drinking?
Yeah. Not by law school, but my early exposure to wine, like even as a kid, we lived in Italy and Spain and like southern Italy and southern Spain. And so those wines are like very powerful wines. And my dad is Cuban and like they drink a lot of Spanish wine. So just like my introduction was like Primitivos and like Ribera del Duero, like really just like potent red in your face wine. So that is like what I grew up trying for the longest time. And also like, I think my dream when I was a kid was to be like I just looked up to my dad so much and I wanted to like be an adventurer. And so like my dream was just to be like a 60-year-old man, like chilling out at a bar in Cairo, like talking about my adventures or whatever. Like I just wanted that vibe. So like anything that gave me, yeah, it's not too late. Anything, I mean, we're working towards it, but anything that gave me like that vibe, I kind of got into as I got older. Like I got very into cigars. I got very into scotch. I was like the weird 20-year-old girl at the bar being like, hey, can I have a scotch?
No, I was that girl. I wanted to be a Renaissance woman that just could talk about anything and do anything and sit at the bar by yourself and order a glass of champagne and not feel like an idiot.
Yeah, totally. So I think I just saw, like a lot of people do, I think, before they get into wine, I think I just saw white wine as like this kind of girly thing and something that's less complex as like compared to red wines, which is absolutely not true. And then I got introduced to great white wine across the board. Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay. I mean, those like some of the best wines in general, not just white wines, best wines in the world do come from Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. And so I just developed an appreciation for the fact that like it's not necessarily about the varietal on the label. It's about the producer and the region and the style and whatnot. So that's a long way of saying I don't know if I have a perspective on Sauvignon Blanc specifically, other than to say there are a million Sauvignon Blancs I absolutely love, and it is capable of producing some of my favorite wines, for sure. Especially like really, really good just really good like oily fish pairings if you're doing like a barrel aged Sauvignon Blanc, and then if you're not, like really, really phenomenal just seafood oyster pairings, which are some of my favorite foods to eat. So I drink it all the time. I love it now.
That's a hard transition to make. Like if you're, I mean, it's like being raised on beef your entire life and having no vegetables, and someone hands you a cucumber and they're like, here you go, enjoy. And you're like, well, this isn't taste like what I'm used to, right? Like red wine versus white wine are two very different animals. And I can understand how one would maybe not appreciate white wine after being brought up, so to speak, on like big heavy reds. But was there a gateway white wine for you?
I mean, I think it was a white burgundy. Again, I was like, I don't exactly remember, but because I like studied French in college and spent a lot of time in France, and still do. I'm pretty sure it was a white burgundy, and I was like, oh, Chardonnay can be really, really amazing.
Mm,
I also liked like a lot of Sauvignon Blancs as early as college as well. Again, like Paris has a lot of really fantastic oyster bars and everything where they're pairing
yeah.
Chablis and Sancerre all the time. So it was probably either like a Sancerre or a white Burgundy. But I think to your point about like growing up on steak and then giving it like having a cucumber and not being able to appreciate the difference. I think that this is where I like don't really agree with this notion that people can't taste the difference between wines because I think that
Mm,
using that analogy, like if someone handed you like a GMO cucumber from like Vaughn's, no hate to Vaughn's, but like a GMO cucumber from Vaughn's, you probably wouldn't think it's that good. But if like someone hands you like this cucumber from like the farm that they have outside their door that they just picked, like you're going to be able to taste the quality in it. And that's going to make you
yeah.
think like way more receptive to the idea that you do in fact like cucumbers. So I think a lot of the time what happens when people think they don't like Sauvignon Blanc or don't like white wine is like they're just getting introduced to a bad product.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I never really thought about it that way, but you're right. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast where vegetables do not taste the way that they taste out in California. So to me, like my whole life, a salad was like crappy, watery iceberg lettuce and tomatoes that didn't taste like anything, or worse, were mushy, and like cucumbers that again, like were gross. And then and so I thought I hated salads my whole life. And I got to California and I'm like, well, maybe I was just eating the wrong salads. Like salads should taste a certain way if they're grown in this way. And I think Sauvignon Blanc is a great example of that, where there's so many bad examples because Sauvignon Blanc is grown all over the world and it's so ubiquitous and there's so many people making it. But when you get really great producers, and actually it was a great producer of Sauvignon Blanc that helped me turn the corner when I moved to Napa. Dan Petrosky was one of the first friends that I made, and he brought me out with him to start sampling grapes. And he was the one that sort of opened my eyes to great Sauvignon Blanc through his brand Massican.
Muskin's great.
Yeah. So that was the first time that I was like, oh, Sauvignon Blanc, it's a noble grape. Like, I should probably pay more attention to this than I have been, because previously I was just sort of going to bars and ordering it like it was a vodka soda. And, Sauvignon Blanc can be so much more than that. And I think, the one that we have is a great example of that. Obviously, when we're talking about Sauvignon Blanc from around the world, there's lots of different variations of what Sauvignon Blanc can be, which I want to dive into a little bit. So we're talking about Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley. Having spent time in France, have you been to the Loire Valley, I assume?
Yes, but I haven't done like a proper wine tour, honestly, which is
Okay.
kind of, I mean, not kind of, it's a huge shame because it's literally one of my favorite regions. I've been there for other reasons and I need to go do like a proper wine visit. Have you?
I'm kind of like you. I went when I was like 13 on a like a school tour. So I got to see it, but I didn't get to like live it. And obviously now having a wine background, I think I'd view it with a slightly different lens, but it's really beautiful. I mean, the place itself is beautiful. It's lined with chateaus. It's what a lot of like the Disney castles are modeled after. But it's really sort of the breadbasket of France, right? And so it's where there's a ton of agriculture, and there's, the Loire Valley is literally along the Loire River, and all the way on the eastern side, you've got these little pockets of wine producing regions on both sides of the river. Sancerre being one of the more famous ones that I mentioned already. But then right next to Sancerre, just sort of south of that, is Menetou-Salon. And so these are places where Sauvignon Blanc reads a little bit more, very much Sauvignon Blanc always lives in like the citrus camp, right? But in the Loire Valley, it's a place where it lives very much in this sort of like mineral, tart citrus. Occasionally it's a little bit herbaceous, but it's nowhere near as herbaceous and grassy as when it comes from a place like New Zealand. And that this is where this concept of terroir starts to enter the equation, because it makes such a big impact with something like Sauvignon Blanc, where you're not often aging at an oak. If anything, it's maybe done in concrete. Maybe there's a little bit of lees stirring, but it's not like Chardonnay where you can do a lot of, manipulation. Sauvignon Blanc tends to be a very pure expression of the grape. And so this is why we pay attention so much to where it's being grown. So you have Loire Valley sort of being, Mecca for Sauvignon Blanc. Then you have New Zealand where things get really over the top and like intensely aromatic and very herbaceous and sort of like, the big personality of the Sauvignon Blanc world. And then you go sort of to the other side in California where all of those citrus things really start to lean outside of tart and more into the like, lemon curd, slightly more like baked lemon, these sweeter flavors that we associate with baked goods, but still very much in that citrus camp. Obviously, there's a lot of exceptions to that. California is a very big state with lots of different wine producing regions. So that's, sort of too generalized a statement. But in general, that's kind of what we're thinking when we talk about Sauvignon Blanc. But is there a particular region that I didn't even mention Bordeaux, which is one of your favorites, where it's often blended with Semillon, and there is a lot of Bordeaux, white Bordeaux that's done in oak. But is there a particular place where you like Sauvignon Blanc from?
I mean, again, I go back to the like, I do like anything as long as it's good. I feel like War, if I don't know what I'm ordering, like if I am looking at a menu and I just don't know the producers well, I will feel pretty good ordering a Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley. Like there's a pretty high chance that I'll like it. I don't feel as confident, just because of the styles I like. Like I tend to like more of that classic, like old world, like mineral driven, like less fruit driven style. I do think that is changing quite a bit. Like I have encountered so many producers in the quote new world that are making wines in that style that rival wines of France and Italy as well. But yeah, if I don't know what if I am not familiar with any producers on a wine list and I want to order a Sauvignon Blanc, I will definitely gravitate towards Loire over like
Mm,
Chile or New Zealand or California, just because I feel a little bit more confident in the style. There is like a very consistent style in that region. I think that that's not as true of like California, where it can really
that's
vary
fair.
based on producer. And then I think there is a consistent style of New Zealand that like I'm just not as partial to. But it can be very good. I think like again, it really comes down to producer for me though. Like I was in Napa recently and I went to Ink Grade. Their Sauvignon Blanc is amazing. It is
Mhm.
like so high acid, so well balanced. Like it's like this beautiful, cool climate, mineral driven Sauvignon Blanc. I was so impressed by it. So if I know the producer, it's way more about that for me than it is region.
Mm. What about, to kind of borrow from your own vernacular, what about like a high stakes wine situation where maybe you're ordering for the table? And maybe, it's the first wine that we're going to have. Um, and we've got a few different dishes. Are we still gravitating towards Loire, or are we maybe going to like a Bordeaux Blanc, or are you never going to New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc because you think it's just too big a gamble?
Yeah, I'd have to know the producer for that one, but that again, like that's a personal taste thing. They're really great. They're really great Sauvignon Blancs from New Zealand. I I mean, my honest answer is I would go with champagne, but that's not the
Okay.
question. But if we're like, yeah, if we're opening a meal, high stakes situation, I need to pair across foods, like champagne is always the answer to me. But yeah, I'd still probably go with Loire. If I have to choose between Sauvignon Blancs, I'd still probably go like a Sancerre or something, assuming it's like appetizers, lighter foods, like we're opening people's palates. Yeah, I still probably would do that. It's just kind of an all around like pleasing high acid palate opener that I
Yeah.
think most people are going to enjoy.
Well, speaking of food, we have to talk about Sauvignon Blanc's greatest food friends. Given that we're in the Loire Valley right now talking about this wine, I would be remiss not to have cheese enter the conversation. I know you're a cheese fan. What are your
Oh God, who
go-to
isn't?
cheeses? Well, a few sociopaths out there are not into
True,
cheese.
true.
They're
We
not
don't
on my
interact with them though.
podcast. We don't
Yeah.
interact. But I mean, one of the classic, or maybe not obviously, but one of the classic pairings with Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc is going to be goat cheese, usually fresh goat cheese. If you haven't done it, and this has not been a part of your life thus far, please hit pause on this podcast, run to whatever grocery store you can, go get yourself some fresh goat cheese, grab a cucumber or a cracker, spread it on there, have a glass and a bite, and watch your mouth explode. Because it really is just like one of the great lovely pairings of the world. When we think about classic wine pairings, this idea of like what grows together goes together, this, Chev, like and Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc, like this is one of the greats. So that would be where I'd start. But feel free to throw out any other cheeses or foods into the equation when we're talking about Sauvignon Blanc.
That was definitely going to be my answer as well. Like that just is the go-to for a classic for a reason. And also like one of the kind of cheat codes of wine pairings is, I mean, as you know, is like wine from a region goes really well with food from that same region,
Yep.
especially I would say in continental Europe, because they've like developed together over many centuries to pair well. And you know, Loire Valley just has really great goat's milk cheese. So that is an amazing pairing. I think it's actually pretty hard if we're talking about like Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc specifically. It You might not find a cheese that pairs like as well as goat cheese, but I think it's pretty hard to find a cheese that doesn't pair well with it. Like
I would agree with that.
it's a pretty universally pleasing wine overall. Like maybe not like a super pungent, super runny cheese, but even that I actually think it would be great. Just spread it over a baguette and add a little bit of honey on top. I think it'd be fantastic. For like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, I would do more of like a garden salad or something.
Mm,
I'm with you on I hated salad growing up. I still don't think iceberg lettuce is a real food. It's not.
it's not.
But yeah. But like a good fresh garden salad, like I think that's an amazing pairing. Cucumber salad, something like that. And then for like a Bordeaux Sauvignon Blanc, I mean, typically the style there is like barrel aged, richer, more of a hefty mouthfeel. As you said, blended with Semillon, which kind of adds this like extra. I would say, I mean, tell me if you disagree with me, but I would say it adds like a little bit of an extra like deep citrus note to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it adds there's like a textural thing and then there's like this umami thing that it sort of adds to balance
yeah,
out a lot of, Sauvignon Blanc can be really, even from the Loire Valley where it's more mineral driven, tends to be very aromatic and very fruit forward. So this addition of Semillon kind of grounds it and gives it like this interesting base note.
yeah, totally. So that's a great like oilier fish. Like if I'm like, I mean, I'm actually not the griller in our household, but like if we're grilling, like a branzino or something outside, like to me, a Bordeaux Sauvignon Blanc would be fantastic. And then coming back to Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc, other pairings. I mean, oysters. Oysters is like such a classic pairing with
Always, yeah.
Sancerre. You literally cannot go wrong. Any lighter fish, any crudos, any like sushi. It's kind of just like
Ooh, you're gonna throw
general.
sushi in
Yeah.
the mix. Okay.
No, yeah, totally. Absolutely. I think there are also probably variations. Like if you get the right producer for any Sauvignon Blanc region, I think there are
Yeah.
some amazing sushi pairings you can do across the board. Again, I just think it depends on the producer. I mean, the great thing about especially Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc is like it because of like the acid backbone it has, it just is pretty versatile. You just can't pair it with something that's like too full bodied that is gonna
Yeah.
overwhelm it. Yeah.
True. I mean, that's the thing with Sauvignon Blanc. Like, I think if you had to divide people into two categories of white wine drinkers, you have like the Chardonnay drinkers and the Sauvignon Blanc drinkers. And generally, the Chardonnay drinkers are the people who like the rounder, softer wines, and the Sauvignon Blanc drinkers like the zippier, more zigzaggy, citrus-driven wines. And they also tend to be like people who love apples versus who like gravitate towards like grapefruit in the morning. Personally, I'm an apple girl myself, but I think this is why Sauvignon Blanc has been so hard to kind of come around to in that I've needed to sort of one, develop the palate, and two, realize that like Sauvignon Blanc can actually be made into these richer, creamier styles that can work with lots of different foods, not just the ones that we've named. So there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. One thing that I should mention, we've talked about crudos and cheeses and not fancier foods because like anybody can have like a block of cheese in their fridge and cut it up and have a snack. But if you really want to get, we'll call it pedestrian with it, one of the things that I have done in the past for some of my seminars to kind of show this idea of like cheese and Sauvignon Blanc, which just at its core is a beautiful pairing. You can do like after school cheese snacks. So you can do like Goldfish. You can do like the spreadable cheese and crackers. You can
Gosh.
do like flavor blasted like there's a lot of different like cheese snacks if you just want to go to your cabinet and like need a snack for your white wine. I'm telling you, this is like you should try it.
It could be, you know what? Yeah, I haven't really tried it. Or not for a long time at least. So, yeah, I mean, the Olivia Pope diet of like popcorn and red wine, I am pro. So maybe I should give it a try.
Popcorn and wine is one of my favorite pairings on the planet. I always have
Yeah.
popcorn in here. But seriously, if you're someone that just like that doesn't want to run to the grocery store, doesn't want to go get some cheese, and you just want to like kind of try what we're talking about, this is a great place to start. Um, are you enjoying this so far? Is this a wine that
Oh
you're
my God,
like
yeah, it's
kind of
wonderful.
going
I'm
back
just
to?
drinking. It's wonderful. I am just drinking much less of it since it's the morning on the West Coast, but no, it's a
Totally.
fantastic wine. I'm so appreciative that you sent it to me. It's like
No, of course.
textbook. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you for drinking it with us. Yeah, this is a fun way to explore Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc or any Sauvignon Blanc for that matter at a fairly reasonable price. It's a great way to see terroir in action. It's a great way to see the grape in action. The other thing that I should probably mention, because again, this is something that I've done in my seminars, Dan Petrosky, who I alluded to earlier from Maskin, he is not only a master of Sauvignon Blanc, he's a master of the martini. So I don't know if you followed him during the pandemic at all, but Dan loves a martini and can drink a martini better than anyone else I know and make one for that matter. Um, but he tipped me off onto subbing out your vermouth in a martini for Sauvignon Blanc. And he was like, it adds a lot of the
Cool.
same aromatics and like it adds some viscosity like vermouth does, but it doesn't add one, the higher ABV because it's not fortified, into the additional sugar. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I tried it and my mind was blown. I highly recommend you try it. If you like, don't do it with like a dirty martini, like a traditional like gin or vodka martini, where you're doing like maybe like a 3-to-1 ratio, or you could even do a 50-50 martini where you do a 1-to-1 ratio where it's half Sauvignon Blanc, half of your vodka or gin. I definitely recommend it. And that's a great way to like, especially if you have a little bit of leftover Sauvignon Blanc, it's a great way to utilize. Or if you're throwing a party and you're like, I just want, you know, I want to be able to use, one, like a Sauvignon bottle of Sauvignon Blanc and have a martini as a side. Like that's a great way to host.
Cool. I like that. I've never tried it, but I do love martinis. So thank you
Yeah.
for turning me on to that. I'll let you know once I try
Yeah.
it.
Please do. I know you're a big like dinner party host. So are there any like tips and tricks in that department you want to add?
Specifically, as they relate to Sauvignon Blanc or in
No,
general?
not necessarily. I think in general.
Okay. Well, I think trying to tie it a little bit to the topic of today, I do think that having kind of like a palate opener as people walk in the door is really, really nice. That can be like a Sancerre, it can be a Chablis, it can be champagne. But I think just having something to kind of like kick off the party. Like I like to hand my guests like a glass of something like the second they walk in and not make them wait and have them like have something to hold and sip on while they talk to each other and while I finish getting set up. So I think that like a lot of Sauvignon Blancs can be really fantastic for that. Again,
Yeah.
specifically ones from Loire Valley, but like really depends on producer. There are tons all over the world that could make for really great kind of like intro wines. Again, trying to like tie it a little bit to the topic of today, like I really love hosting oyster nights. And I know those sound really intimidating to
Mm,
people, but like they're actually very low lift. Like it's such a fancy looking way to like I call it's kind of like wearing a dress. Like you
mm,
put on a dress and people like are like, "Oh, you look so put together." And like, "What are you wearing?" You just put on one thing. Like
yeah.
dresses are amazing because you don't have to put on an entire outfit. So, I think that oyster nights are incredible because literally if you just like go get like a couple dozen oysters, even a dozen, whatever, your local seafood shop and you get a couple of oyster knives, which you can order online. People are so impressed and you just like don't have to do anything else. That's like a great thing to do with like a Sauvignon Blanc or something and plenty of other wines as well.
Do you shuck them or you have the seafood purveyor shuck them for you?
You can do either. I shuck them just because I
Okay.
think that it's kind of fun. Like I
Yeah.
like it. I have a couple of oyster knives at home. I do use like which I think most people do, but I do use like a cloth when I'm doing
Yeah.
it just because I have like, yeah, I have
Get
stopped
a little
myself
grip.
with an oyster knife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I don't think there's any shame in having your local like seafood shop do it.
Yeah. Whole Foods will do it for you free of charge.
Yeah, totally, which is awesome. It just carries like so much weight. Like people are like, "Whoa!" Like you're shucking your own oysters, and like once you learn how to do it, it's really not that hard. So I do tend to do it at home. Same thing with crudos. Like again for today's episode, like Sauvignon Blanc and Crudo, specifically certain styles of Sauvignon Blanc, is an amazing pairing. Crudos are such a great way to start off hosting. I am someone who like will tend to just bite off a little bit more than I can chew. So usually when my guests come over, I'm like already like not already I'm like not ready. I'm like still cooking, so I like to have something out and ready for them when they get in, and crudos are a great way to do that. They're just like super low
Mm.
lift, they look impressive, you can put them out on the table. Kind of just have to like slice up fish and toss some like lemon and herbs over it and like a little bit of sea salt and people are happy.
I lived in New York for years before I moved to Napa Valley, so hosting was not something that I got to do a lot because I lived in, a tiny little apartment. But living in Napa, that was something that I learned to do, and it was like that. I think to me, it's like what made me feel like an adult. So I love the idea of hosting. I love the idea of hosting with wine. I think you're right. Like oysters seem very high lift, but in reality are very low lift and don't require a ton of effort. Um, Same as just like a great cheese board. Like if you go to a
Hmm.
quality cheesemonger and just say like, give me 4 cheeses that you think are great that are going to show different sides of what cheese can be. You can really just kind of let that be the star of the show in the same way that you can let like great wine be the star of the show. You don't need
Totally.
to spend a ton of money, but if you put out a few extra dollars, I think it really shows in the glass, and I think it shows your guests that you care just a little bit more than they thought you might have, which is nice. And I think this wine is a great example of a wine that can be obviously served with cheese and crudo and oysters, but also is just like a great crowd pleaser and perfect at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I hope everyone out there who's enjoying this wine with us is in fact enjoying it. Hopefully you're having a snack of some sort with it. Laura, thank you so much for being with us today. What's on the horizon for you?
Thank you for having me. Um, I think I'm going to be doing a lot more work on Substack, which I'm very excited for. I feel like I found a really engaged community there. Not that I didn't already have that on Instagram, but I feel like the level of activity there has been really fun. And then I'm planning to do more in-person events.
Great.
I got like a number of tickets for my community to take them to the Burn and Done in New York in a few weeks. So I'm doing that, which I'm super excited about. I'm going to be hosting a tasting in New York for some of my community members as well. I'm just trying to do more stuff like that throughout the year. I mean, most people in my community are in like New York and London, it seems, but I'm going to try to like do some stuff there, but then start, actually hitting up some of the other cities that where I would like to be seeing my community members. So I think, yeah, really it's just finding a way to like do more things in person.
I love that. I love the in person events, especially when we live such an online life. It makes it feel a little more real. It's also just great feedback to find out like what people are loving and you want more of.
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of wanting more of, if you want more of these wines and you are not a member of the Wine Access Unfiltered Podcast Wine Club, you can find everything you need in the description below to join. And if you want more of Pilar, I will link everything and everywhere she is, including Instagram, TikTok, and her Substack, if you want to learn more about what she's been up to. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being here. Cheers. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon with this delightful bottle of Sauvignon Blanc.
Cheers. Thanks, Amanda. Nice to meet you like a little bit more substantially than over DM.
Yes, likewise.